Built it right, built it strong, built it fast, built it done, built it true, built it real, yeah, I built it.
All right, what is up, everybody? Today, I'm out here, beautiful day in Boise, Idaho, wanting to talk about projects, wanting to talk about what a project is. This has been something that I have been trying to think about, and thinking about, not just trying, but actually thinking about. What is a project? Have you ever wondered what that is? Like, or ask yourself that, like, what actually is a project? What are we trying to do when we say, hey, I'm working on this project? I feel like that's something that every single person can relate with. Whether you're a creative, working on a song, or maybe a script, or some sort of design, or maybe you're an engineer working on a product, some sort of technical job or workflow. Maybe you're a project manager and you're managing projects. We all have projects in our life. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and your project tonight is to make dinner. We all have projects. It's just one of those things that's like everyone has to do it because everyone has to work. Everyone has to get stuff done. But how often do we ask, well, what is a project? Like, what exactly are we doing? And maybe that's kind of such an obvious answer that no one's ever stopped to take the time to think about it. You know, it's kind of interesting how that works. Like, the best, most interesting questions sometimes are the ones that just seem so obvious, and yet because they're so obvious, we don't really take the time to think about it. And so I just want to walk and think through with you about what a project is. So maybe you just take a second and just think to yourself, what is a project? What is it? What is a project? Like, what are you trying to do at the end of a day when someone says, hey, I'm working on a project? Like, what exactly are they trying to do? So this is my answer, okay? Maybe you have your answer, but this is my answer. And if you do have an answer, I'd be curious what it is. Put it down in the comments. And that's just an interesting discussion. Like, what is it from your perspective? But this is my answer, okay? So take it or leave it. But this is how I think about projects. You have some sort of need, okay? You have a need, you have a desire, you have a problem. There's some sort of thing that triggers work. Work needs to happen because either something's missing, something's broken, you need something, you have a desire for something, there's a problem, okay? Let's just call that need. I think need is probably the most generic or general term. So you have a need, okay? And what does a need need? Well, it needs a solution, right? So what a project is it's using a need to determine or uncover a solution. And sorry, my dog here. Bathroom break. Come on, Rod. So you have a need, and your need drives a solution. But how do we actually get to a solution? Well, this is what's the tricky part that we all figure out is it takes work, right? You have a need, and it takes work to drive to a solution. But how do we actually get work done? Well, you use your resources. Right? We have resources, we have time, we have skills, we have energy, we have materials, we have money, right? Labor, capital, tools. We have our suite of resources. And that's how I think about a project in general. Like, the three building blocks of all projects just start off with these three things, which is your need, right? What's the problem? Your resources. What do we got to work with, right? Who's on the team? Is it just you? How much time do you got? How much money can you invest in this thing? And then you have the solution, which at the end of the day is the answer, right? It's the response to the need. And hopefully your solution meets the need, right? That's the goal, is to use your resources wisely, to use your resources well, to create a great solution that meets the needs. So I want you to think about a project you've worked on that maybe you didn't have the right resources for. Maybe you didn't have enough time. I feel like that is the chief, maybe the number one issue when we're working on our projects, is that we tend to budget incorrectly how much time things are going to take. You ever experienced that? I know I am guilty with a capital G of that one. And so maybe you didn't have enough time. Maybe you didn't have enough skills. Maybe you didn't have the right team. Maybe you didn't have the right materials to build a good solution, right? And so when we have these building blocks of a project, we use them, right? So when you think about what a building block is, it's something that we use as a resource, as a tool, as a thing that we use to assemble a project, okay? And so I want you to think about that. Like, when you're working on a project, just ask yourself, what are the needs that we're trying to address, right? Maybe you're a songwriter. What is the need that you have that's motivating the creation of this song? And then what are the resources you have at your disposal? Do you have an instrument? Do you have time? Do you have ideas, right? So what are the resources you have? And then what's the solution? Well, the song itself is the solution. And then ask yourself, how good of a solution is it? And I think every single person, the better you get at identifying these building blocks of your project, the clearer you're gonna be when you're working on your project, right? So if you can clearly tell me, if I can ask you, let's say you call me up and you say, hey Christian, hey, I'm working on a project, things are going sideways, we're over budget, we're behind schedule, the solution's awful, everyone hates it, what's going on? And if I ask you, well, what's the need that you're addressing? And if you don't know that answer right off the top of your head, oh, we're solving this problem. Or this is the desire from my boss. This is what they want to see done. If you don't know, then how do you know if your solution's a good one, right? How do you know what resources you have at your disposal? Similarly, if you sit down with me and I say, hey, what are your resources? What do we got to work with here? And you can't clearly, and I mean clearly, tell me the resources you have available. You can't tell me who is around to work on this thing. You can't tell me how many hours a week they have to work on this thing. You can't tell me if we have a budget or not. You can't tell me what kind of materials and workflows and processes we have to work with. You don't even know what the processes are to get something approved. We're gonna have problems, okay? If you don't know your resource system, we're gonna have some serious problems. Similarly, if you sit down and maybe you do know your needs, maybe you do know your resources, but if you don't know the solution you're working on, like the back of your hand, well then what are we even pointing at, right? Like what's it all for? And so you need to know your solution system just as well as you know your need system and your resource system, okay? So you need to know all three of these, right? So, because if you don't know your need, you don't know what you're trying to fix. If you don't know what resources you have, you don't know how you're going to fix it. And if you don't know your solution, then you don't know. So there's always a solution. There's never not a solution, ever, ever. right? A missing solution is the current solution. And you know, you might be like, oh, that's like semantics or something, but no, like think about it. Like if something's broken, that just means that the current system, the current solution isn't meeting the need. And that way you can just say, hey, look, if your boss says, you know, oh, we don't have time to work on the new on a solution, you could say, well, we already have this solution. It's just so awful. Everything's broken. And so you can reframe it and say, hey, let's actually evaluate the effectiveness of our current solution against the needs that we've identified. And then you actually have something to work off of. Okay, so in the future, when we build this better solution, we get to compare it to the current one, right? And so then we have something to benchmark off of. That's called benchmarking, right? So you benchmark, which means you have the current baseline or status quo of what is and how this current system is functioning that's generating these problems, that's generating these needs, or that's opened up the desire to upgrade something, or has maybe gotten you this far, but now you need to go to the next level. Oh, here we go. Look at this. Let's see if I can turn this around here. We got some guys on a nice big crane here. That's kind of fun. Look at this. All right, so here we go. They have a need. The need is to get wood up to the top of this roof. And they have a resource. It's called this crane. And all of the dudes who are hoisting it and driving that rig. And that's their solution, is this process. The process of wrapping up the wood with these straps and undergoing this process of hoisting it up there, lowering it down, and having some dude up there to receive it. And there you go. That's a pretty effective solution, I'd say. And so you can't get away from projects, right? Like every form of work, you could think about it, is just projects within projects within projects. Just everything is projects. And everybody has to think about this. Like if you have to be locked in on identifying, hey, we have a need. We got to get wood up here, up to the second floor of this building. All right, what do we got to work with? We got homie 1, 2, and 3. We got a crane. Let's go. Let's create the solution, which is going to be a process that undergoes wrapping that wood up, bringing it up, and lowering it down, and there we go. There's our solution. But you know what? Maybe next week, one of the straps break and lands on a dude and kills a guy, right? And all of a sudden, headquarters says, hey, that process, that's the liability of that process now is too risky. So now we need to think of a new process, a new solution, because that current one is now no longer feasible, right? So there you go. Now you have your same resources, but you need to think of a new kind of solution. And hopefully at this point, everyone can relate to what I'm talking about, right? You all of a sudden, something's working for a while. You have a solution that's working for a while. And over time, it gets stale. Or over time, something in the environment changes. A new boss comes in, or a software update happened, and something now in the pipeline broke. And now you have to think of either a workaround or a complete overhaul. And this is just common. This is common stuff that everyone has to deal with. I don't care if you're working construction, like these dudes, you're working in software, or like I said, you know, you're staying home with the kids and you're trying to figure out bedtime. Right? I got a couple kids, and I can tell you what worked for the bedtime routine when my kids were 3 and 5 is very different than what's working these days for bedtime routine. So every solution has a lifespan or a life cycle. And so we could talk about that, right? Like the need might stay the same, but the window with which that solution is working for you, right? It's like a kid. It grows up, gets old, and dies, right? It's like any other biological organism. It has a lifespan. Solutions have lifespans. And what's working today might work tomorrow. Heck, it might work next year or in 10 years, but at some point, that solution is gonna get old and it's gonna die. And so if you're one of those people that's like, nope, this is the end all be all solution, my system's gonna be the same, I've solved today's problem and now I never have to solve it again, I'm here to tell you that's probably not gonna be true. We keep resolving the same problems. Have you noticed this, right? We rode horses. Before that, we walked. Then we came up with maybe, I don't know, chariots and wagons and all sorts of ways that we could, have these carts. And then somewhere along the lines, we came up with trains and other modes of moving around, airplanes and cars. And guess what? What's Elon doing? Elon Musk, he's creating electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. We're still solving the same problem. What is it? Mobility, right? Getting me from point A to point B. We keep coming up with new solutions. And if I had to guess, just based off of history, I'm gonna be guessing we're gonna be solving this problem for the next ever. I don't think we'll ever not be working on better solutions for this problem. My guess is that as long as humans are around, we'll be coming up with new ways to solve that same problem. And so when you see a problem out there at your job or in the marketplace of ideas, maybe you're an academic and someone's already solved a thing, just because a thing is solved doesn't mean that that solution is the forever solution. I think that's the beauty of reality. The beauty of reality is that there's always a new way to do something. There's always a new solution to be had, to be found. And it's really up to you to find it. And I love that mentality. I think the mentality of saying, hey, you know what? Here's the solution. I made it today, and now that's gonna be it for the rest of eternity is pretty unrealistic. Isn't that? It's like, imagine going to the gym and just doing the same workout, the exact same workout for the rest of your life. And you're like, well, solve that problem. No, you didn't, because your body adapts, the need adapts to the solution. They're in a relationship, right? Think about it. My body, I go work out, it gets used to that stimulation, so used to it that the stimulation stops stimulating, right? The workout stops being effective because my body has adapted to the solution to the point that it's no longer effective. That's pretty cool. So that means my solution now has to outsmart my problem. And so I constantly have to think about new ways to solve it to keep the solution effective, to keep the solution working. And I think what happens a lot of times in business, in marriage, in raising kids, in life, working out, eating healthy, doing what we do, is really, we're lazy. We've solved a problem once and we think, that's it, I'm all done, I don't have to solve it anymore. I've used my resources, I've identified this need, and my solution is working, and great, never have to think about that again. Then all of a sudden in 10 years when your marriage is falling apart or your kids hate your guts, you're like, what happened? And your kids are like, well, Dad, you still treat me like I'm 3 years old and I'm 13. But I was such a good parent when you were 3. I really knew exactly how to treat you as a 3-year-old. Yeah, but if you treat a 13-year-old like a 3-year-old, you're doing it wrong, okay? So in the same way, if you treat your business like a 3-year-old business and has been around 13 years, you're probably doing something wrong. And so we have to always be reevaluating in this loop over and over and over again about, hey, what are the needs, right? Getting back to those building blocks. What are the needs? What are the resources I have to work with? And what are the solutions that I'm using those resources to make? And are those solutions working for the need? Are they meeting the need? Are you solving the problem? Are you meeting the desire? Are you meeting the demands of today? And if you're not, then the solution isn't working. And you got to think about, well, all right, well, what else can we do? Do we need more resources? Do we need different resources? Do I need a new skill? Do I need more time? And in general, like, what other solutions have I not explored? Right? So I think that's a pretty interesting thought for today. And in general, what I'd like to do with these walks is just to share in this way, about projects, about building systems, about building life, about what it means to make things well, and always just be able to improve our project skills, our project making skills. I definitely see that there's a big gap in the knowledge world around projects, project management, and in general building, to understand those underlying patterns of what it means to do projects well. Like today, talking about the structure of what a project is, and how do we actually see that pattern that underlies, that just exists across all projects. And once you understand, you see that pattern, you can bring it with you. It's like a little nugget. And you can just bring that nugget into any project you ever work on again, and you just know the framework or how to think about that project. Oh, hey, I'm coming into a project. What are the needs? What are the resources? What's the solution? Boom, boom, boom. There's your framework. And there's more to the framework, and I'll be talking about it. But I think in general, like, I want to use this time together to explore projects. If you're someone who likes to work on projects, if you're someone who builds stuff, which I think everyone is, but if you're someone who wants to get better at building stuff, I invite you to join me on these walks. It would actually be kind of cool. I'm thinking about it. It'd be kind of cool if people listened to this podcast while walking. We actually walk together. One of my favorite activities in life is walking and talking. I just love it. My wife actually wrote a song called Walkin' and Talkin'. She's a songwriter, and she wrote me a song all about walking and talking and how much we like doing that. And it really is. It's probably one of the simple pleasures in life, is to walk and to talk and to process. I think there's probably, I'd imagine there's some research out there on walking and talking and how good it is for our brains to do it. Anyway, if you're someone who likes to build better and you want to go on a walk with me, I want to do this a few times a week. Who knows how often? Maybe I'll start off once a week and work it up from there. But I think in general, talking about projects, talking about how we can build projects better, do them better, feel free to put in the comments if you want me to respond to something. Ask me a question about project management. Ask me a question about, figuring out what parts of projects you like to do and how to leverage that, how to zoom in, hone in on the parts of projects that work for you, and then what to do to get out of the parts that aren't working for you. All that kind of stuff. Or maybe you're working on a particular thing and there's a bottleneck, and you want to ask how to get out of it. I think it'd be fun to talk about and really just have a community around building better, building better lives, better relationships, better businesses, and just figuring out how to become amazing project doers. Everyone has their domain, right? And mine is systems engineering. And the cool part about systems engineering is it applies to anything, right? Anything can be seen as a system. And so really with systems engineering, it's all about how to just engineer stuff, right? It doesn't really matter if it's a sub or a satellite, or it's a bridge, or it's a semiconductor, or it's a car, or it's a breakfast burrito. It doesn't matter. Everything is a system. And how do we engineer stuff, right? That's really all systems engineering is. Systems engineering in general, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's really around engineering really complicated stuff that's, thousands and thousands of parts and pieces with, hundreds of project managers, maybe over subsystems of electrical and mechanical and, physical, digital, hardware, software systems, and everything has to work together just right for the thing to work. And it has to work, typically in a defense context or in a, maybe aerospace context, it has to work right the first time. It can't afford any failure. Think about it like a space shuttle launch, right? If you can only test it once live, and if it fails, people die, right? That's a perfect systems engineering context where you really got to be able to bring everything together and make sure it's right. And the field has developed a ton of methods and approaches and tools and ways of doing stuff to make sure that these projects work. But I think in general, that's my field. But I think other people, maybe you're a firefighter and you're working on other kinds of projects. I don't know, you're a cop, or you're a nurse, or a doctor, a lawyer, or those are all those simple jobs. But maybe you're a software engineer, I don't know, whatever. There's so many things out there that people do. Maybe you're on a lawn care service and you're wanting to get better at running projects, right? Every time you cut a lawn, that's a project. Every time you set up a new process, that's a project. And you want to get better at doing that action over and over, because we all do it so many times. And you just want to get better at the fundamentals. Ooh, that's a good way to put it. The fundamentals of projects. Maybe there's a better, I don't know, I'm horrible at marketing, so. But I think it would be really cool. Oh, here we got a golf cart. Let's see if they zoom in behind me here. We got a golf cart, electric golf carts. It's summer here in Idaho, and it's a whole thing. Everyone has their golf carts, and there's golf cart gangs, right? And there's kids. These kids, they drive around like packs of golf cart kids. And pretty intimidating stuff, seeing an 11-year-old with their little posse driving around the neighborhood, ripping on their little electric golf carts. Pretty awesome. Anyway, so I think the fundamentals of projects, project management, not just management though, it's really just the fundamentals of just doing projects. If that's you, I definitely want to hang out, definitely want to learn from you, definitely want to share what I know. A little bit about me, I guess that makes sense to share, is, I have a background in systems engineering. I did a PhD in systems engineering at Cornell University. I graduated in 2023. I've been working for a company called INCOSE, which is the International Council on Systems Engineering, as their director of product. And I oversee, 4-ish teams, and I've learned a lot, but more than that, I just think I'm passionate, right? I'm passionate about how do we get people to do better at projects. I've been around enough. I've seen enough things. I've been on enough projects to see some patterns, right? We kind of stink at scoping. We kind of stink at it, right? We overscope, we misscope, we have scope creep, we underscope. We're kind of garbage at scoping projects. Why is that? I want to talk about it, Specification, requirements. Requirements seem to gridlock everything. When someone's kind of a requirements dragon, a requirements dragon, that person can hold up an entire project because they have to get everything so specified, so overly in the minutia of the details that everyone's hung up. Why do we do that? Or anyway, I could go on and on and on about that, but in general, I want this time together to be very much around identifying common problems in projects and how do we solve it. And it doesn't matter what your domain is. That's the beauty of projects, is that I really don't care where you're coming from in terms of your domain, your background, your job. I just want to learn from you how you do projects better. I just think that's such an important part of life that does not get enough airtime. I think a lot of people talk about their domain of expertise, right? Oh, you want to be a better X academic. You want to be a better, something random. What's something random? A better trampoline installation expert, right? They probably have an entire conference about it. But I want to talk about being better at building. Anyway, so I think that's all today. I'll catch you all next time.